All right. Well, here's just an outline of the topics that we're going to cover today. Obviously, this is about the BRRRR strategy. We're going to talk about exactly what the BRRRR strategy is, the benefits of doing the BRRRR strategy. We're going to dive into each of the 5 steps of the BRRRR strategy so that you have a nice overview of everything. And then towards the end, we're going to do a side-by-side example purchase, go over a case study, some common investor mistakes, and frequently asked questions. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys. So what exactly is the BRRRR strategy? Some of you may already be familiar with it and some of you may not, but essentially it's a 5-step investment strategy for building wealth in real estate. The strategy may sound a bit complicated at first, but it's actually very simple. And if you're familiar with the fix and flip method and also buy and hold, BRRRR is basically a hybrid between those 2 methods. So the acronym itself stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So if we break this down, the way it works is you purchase a property for under market value. Typically, it's a distressed property that needs work. You then renovate the property in order to increase its value. Once the property is renovated, you then find a qualified tenant to place into the property. That way you're able to collect rental income and also have the tenant pay down the mortgage for you. And then you refinance the property. And then the goal is to pull most of your money back out of the deal. Typically, it's around 75 to 80% of the ARV, which is after repair value. And then finally, the last step, you repeat the process all over again by taking that same initial investment and purchasing another property. So with that said, how can you tell if the BRRRR strategy is right for you? Nowadays, I'm sure you guys are all aware that there's so many ways to invest. There's the stock market, mutual funds, cryptocurrency. Why on earth would someone want to choose the BRRRR strategy over other options? So Ralph, can you tell us more about what some of the benefits of the BRRRR strategy are?
Absolutely. So first benefit, obviously, is rental income. You're going to build your equity and passive income over time through the rent that you're going to receive from the BRRRR properties. It's got a strong ROI. There's multiple ways to increase your return. You've got the rental income, you've got appreciation, depreciation, and leverage equity. And essentially what's happening there is that you're able to get different types of returns with one asset, right? You also have the low startup cost. It allows you to build a rental portfolio with a fixed amount of initial capital. And what that means is that you can leverage other ways to raise money in order for you to start your BRRRR. Low risk, when done correctly, and of course you have to do your own research and do your homework, you can leverage other experts. And by leveraging experts, you're able to duplicate and get your outcome to be easily duplicated, and allows you to lower your amount of risk because you have the experts there to help you along the way. Financial freedom, okay? This number is different for everyone, but essentially financial freedom is the ability to scale in a way where the rental income you're receiving from the property is able to cover your expenses or your lifestyle. And then increase the velocity of your money. This one's important, guys, because increasing the velocity of your money is essentially the cash that you have to invest. How much of a return are you getting that over time? Okay. If you have an asset that you buy, and then in a period of 10 years, it's going to give you the same fixed return versus an asset that you buy, and you're able to grow that and leverage that with the same amount of capital, initial capital, without having to put more money into it. That's going to determine your velocity of your money.
All right, so let's get into first step.
Well, I have a question actually. If we could go back to that other slide. So couldn't help but notice that meme, right? Stock market investors this morning versus real estate investors this morning. How do you feel like that's still the case with the BRRRR?
Having that relaxed.
I mean, when I look at that meme and I see that guy kicked back, relaxed, and just thinking that life is great, I think of the person who knows exactly what their plan is and they're executing it because they have it detailed and they know exactly what the next step is. The guy at the top, you can replace that stock market investor this morning with real estate investor this morning if you don't have a detailed plan, because the plan is what's going to keep you from pulling your hair out.
Perfect. Or if you had crypto yesterday, I guess too.
Yes, that was a lot of fun yesterday. And it's going to be a lot of fun continuing moving forward. So step number one is buy. Okay, this is my favorite part of the process, and arguably probably the most important part. You have to purchase a distressed property below market value, so you'll be able to renovate it. And the reason why this is critical to the BRRRR process is because with the buying of the asset, okay, is going to allow you to either make the BRRRR a system that's going to be leveraged, or it's going to stop you in your tracks, depending on how you buy. Okay. I don't know if you guys ever heard those saying, you make your money when you buy. In this case, here's the reason why that's important. If you get a good enough deal, okay, you can be poor on the rehab. You can take longer than expected on the project. You might even get a tenant that might possibly pay a little bit below what you thought you could rent it for. But if the price is good enough, you can make up for all of those mistakes, okay? If you buy high, you can execute the rehab perfectly, under budget and in a shorter amount of time, and you still won't come out on the other end if your purchase of the ARV is too high. ARV, guys, is basically after repair value. So when you're buying a property, you're going to have to keep in mind what the resale value is going to be, or what the value is going to be after you make the renovations. And then that's going to guide you towards how much of your capital or your investment that you have in the property when you first buy it, or you're able to extract out. The quick formula that we use is acquisition or sales price plus rehab is 75% of the ARV, meaning what I buy it for, okay, plus what it's going to cost me in the rehab has to be 75% or less than the after repair value if I want to get all of my money out. Now in South Florida, and we'll get to this later on down the presentation, and we'll show you exactly how the numbers shake out. But in South Florida, we're typically going to be higher than 75% on the rehab and the acquisition price, because that's just what distressed properties are trading for. What's going to offset that, however, down here is that because we have high appreciation and increase in rental incomes, we pay a little bit more of a premium, and we have a little bit more money left in the BRRRR, but we'll be able to extract that in a shorter amount of time in comparison to other markets in the United States. Next slide. Oh, you know what? Go back one slide, please. I don't want to go over the meme either. Wholesalers in Miami, and Hermano can attest to this, be like $5,000 for rehab. Listen, wholesalers are the funniest people in the world. They, like, any rehab is like a tenth of what it actually is. They're like, slap some paint on it, it's great, and it looks like this picture. So shout out to all my wholesalers. I love you guys, but come on, you be crazy sometimes with your rehab estimates.
Yep, so true.
All right, going into step 2, which is rehab. So rehabbing a property. One of the crucial parts of real estate investing is the skill of learning how to properly estimate for rehab costs. Under budgeting for repairs can definitely play a significant factor in your overall numbers, so you want to make sure you understand potential expenses as much as possible. So we're constantly tweaking things along the way and learning new stuff with every property that we work on, but here are some of the systems that we have in place for each of the property to help us work efficiently during the rehab stage. So the first is understanding the neighborhood. Even before we ever submit an offer on a property, we're looking at comparable properties within the surrounding area to analyze what the final product should look like. You want to make sure that you never over improve a property, because whenever you renovate either above or below an area standard, it can cost you in the end. Second, we always take a tour of the property thoroughly. So Ralph and I are definitely not experts in construction, and this is why when figuring out our rehab costs, we literally have the contractor meet us at the property so that they can tell us, they can see the property with their own eyes and also give us the best estimate for what the property needs. We actually have a checklist that we use, and we literally go room by room, take note of everything, write down any repairs that are needed. And this is how we build out the scope of work for each project. And if you're a newbie and you've never done this before, we recommend getting multiple quotes from different contractors just to see who will give you a good price overall. It's always helpful when they itemize each item and separate labor costs from material costs. And that way you're able to get a ballpark figure for what items should cost. And after you get a few different quotes, you're able to get a better idea of what the going rate is for a particular item. And that way you'll be able to weed out anybody that's significantly higher or lower than the standard. And then we also take lots of pictures and videos. So this is something we do with every new property that we acquire. We take before photos and video walkthroughs in the beginning, and also along the way throughout the entire rehab phase. This just helps us to be able to easily reference something within the property that may have been overlooked, or if we need to go back and show something to a subcontractor, it's just easier to already have the pictures of everything. And on that note, here are just some sample pictures of before photos for some of the properties that we've acquired. So as you can see, they're severely distressed. They're not always in the most livable conditions. And these are pretty much the gems that we look for when it comes to purchasing properties to Burr.
Smells like money to me.
Mhm. Definitely craziness.
All right, so moving on to the third step, which is rent. So you may have heard the saying, cash is king and cash flow is queen. So cash flow is the flow of money coming in versus going out. And the rental phase is definitely that sweet spot of where the magic happens to set yourself up for passive income over time. So one quick caveat here that I want to point out is that real estate investing is definitely a long-term play. It's not a get-rich-quick approach. You certainly won't get rich with rental properties right away, with a few $100s a month minus vacancies, minus repairs, minus other costs. You're not going to make that much money in the first initial years. However, 10, 20, 30 years down the line, once the mortgages are being paid off and while rent prices continue to increase, that's where the magic happens and that's where the real wealth is made. Especially once mortgages are paid off, that's where cash flow essentially starts going through the roof. So how do you set this up exactly? So basically, once a property is renovated, you'll want to place a tenant in there that's going to rent the property from you. Now, when it comes to renting out your properties, you can either choose to do it yourself, or you can hire a property manager or a real estate agent to place the tenant for you. Just keep in mind that if you're going to do it yourself, you will need to list the property on your own. You'll also have to be the one that coordinates showings, screen tenants, collects rent payments, and handles any maintenance requests or repairs. So keep that in mind because it can be very time consuming. And if you want to eventually scale at a high level, this may not be the best approach. Another thing you'll want to do is identify your criteria for any potential tenants that you accept in your properties. So here's just a sample of what our criteria looks like. We basically do a credit and background check on anyone that we're considering. We do this for every adult over the age of 18 years old. Ideally, we want someone with no previous evictions or felonies on their records. If they do have some type of felony, we'll look to see how serious of an offense it is and how long ago it was. We also require pay stubs to make sure that they're financially capable of paying the monthly rent amount. And we also collect first, last, and security up front ever before providing the keys to tenants. So you want to not only have this criteria in place, but also stand firm to it as much as possible. Having these types of standards definitely helps us to weed out any potential problem tenants. Not to say that you still can't run into issues, because you can, and we have. However, it does reduce the likelihood. And trust me when I say that putting in the work up front to find the right tenant can definitely save you so many headaches and frustrations down the line.
And I see we got a question. We got a question from Steve. Is it okay if I take it right now?
Go for it.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Steve. So this question is directed to Ralph. Ralph, you mentioned getting multiple quotes and breaking out labor and materials. Can you share your thoughts on buying the materials yourself and having the contractor just pick them up at Home Depot or the store, et cetera, to try to eliminate the markup and ensure that only material for your BRRRR is bought? Thanks, Steve.
This is a great question. And actually, I have to give credit to Ayana. When we first started doing the BRRRRs, we were trying the approach of having the contractor just give us a total quote. What we found, however, is that one or two things happen. Either A, the contractor gouges on prices because they don't want to be short on material, or B, they don't understand how much material they need, and then they run short, and then they try to have to nickel and dime us on the line. So what we did was we actually created a pro account at Home Depot. And then what we would do is we would tell them on a weekly basis to give us a list of the things they're gonna work on, go to Home Depot, and then at the Home Depot, they'll actually give us a call or a text message and let us know the contractor's there. And when we approve that purchase, we get an itemized detailed list, which then we can go ahead and apply to whatever project we're working on. So to answer your question, Stephen, we prefer to have labor only quotes, and then whatever the materials are, we have them run through the pro account, and then we pay those separately.
Yeah, it just to add on there, it helps to have more transparency and visibility on everything. And it's so simple. Home Depot made it so simple for us. I literally get a text message on my phone and approve the quote of what they're trying to buy. And then I get a receipt to my email. So we can literally see line item by line item what they're purchasing. It's also a great way to make sure that they're not purchasing for other jobs, or that there's, that they're purchasing what they're supposed to. So it just has that level of transparency. We like that.
Exactly. All right, step number 4, refinance. Pull your money back out. Okay, this is my second favorite part of the BRRRR process. So securing the right lender with the right LTV rate and terms is absolutely critical. Okay, this is where we talk about keep starting with the end in mind. Okay, and which is one of the points here. But the point is that when you're starting your BRRRR process, you have to know exactly what your lender is going to require on the back end. Okay, because if you don't, then you might purchase what you think is a quote unquote deal, and then you can't get your money out of it, and it's your typical traditional real estate investment. Which, by the way, I truly believe that any investment in real estate is a good investment. It's just that, is it the best vehicle, right? Because we're trying to be as efficient as possible with our money, and that's why we feel the BRRRR is the best, most efficient process or approach to rental properties. Ask your lender what LTV they're offering. Okay, by the way, this LTV changes all the time. During the pandemic, we had it as high as 85% LTV down to 70 or 65% LTV. So it depends on the level of confidence in the market and in lending, and it's all over the place. So you try your best to have an idea what the refinance is going to be, but the reality is life will happen, and you will run into a possible hurdle, and that might change on you, and you'll have to make, a pivot within the business plan or the BRRRR process. If your refinance LTV is 75%, that's your target number to be all in for. Just like we talked about early in our slide when we were buying it. If you're buying it at, let's say, 70%, which is typically the number in South Florida, 70% of the ARV, and you have a, $25,000 or $30,000 rehab, 75% of whatever that ARV is going to be what you get out. The rest that's left over is what you're going to have left in the deal. So just keep that in mind, because if you're planning to get all your money out and you're buying at 70%, you might be disappointed at the end of the BRRRR. So you want to do your math up front, and you also want to make sure that your lender is on board with the same LTVs and rates and terms that you're planning for. And some banks might require seasoning. Some banks, depending on the LTV or the rate or the terms, is going to want to see that you have a property for at least 3 months or 6 months, and have it rented maybe for at least a month or 2. It all depends. So make sure you do your homework, do your own research, and get that up front, so that way you're not surprised. Next slide.
Question about that before we move on. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering how they can find lenders like that. If you want to touch on that real fast.
Well, going back to when we first started this whole presentation, we want to be a resource and an ecosystem for you in regards to real estate investing. So if you guys need some referrals or references, reach out to us, and we'll be able to provide people that will help you with that. But just so you know, the lenders typically that lend on BRRRRs and on real estate investments are not your typical Fannie, Freddie Mac type loans. It's not the type of loans that you would go to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and apply for a loan and then give you that loan. I mean, you could do that, but what you're going to find is you're going to run into an issue on property number 2, 3, or 4. Whereas the type of lenders that do what's called a debt service loan, they don't really care so much about you. They care more about the property, and you can do 30 loans in 1 year and not bat an eye. So that's the difference between doing a type of loan that's what we call a debt service loan, and your traditional loan, which is the one that you go to the bank for and they run you through the ringer with all sorts of documentation. And let's be honest, in this market, it's not investor friendly. So unless you're buying a primary residence, they make it extremely difficult to get qualified for a loan.
Awesome. And real fast, I do have a quick question in regards to the LTV from Summer Matthews. With your initial purchase, how much should your LTV be?
Well, we're going to cover the math here in the next couple slides. But again, it's been our experience that when you do the BRRRR down here, you're going to leave money in the deal. So we'll do quick math. If you did an ARV of, let's call it 300,000, okay, at 300,000, you're buying at 75% all in, you're looking at about $15,000 over the purchase price that you're going to be able to refinance out. So if your rehab is 30 grand, you'll have 15 grand left in the deal because you have your initial purchase, which is 70%, plus your additional 5% over 300,000 is 15 grand. So if your rehab budget is 30, you'll have 15 of it being refinanced out, and the other 15 will be left in the deal, to use real quick and dirty math. I hope I was able to answer that without confusing you too much. I think in the next couple of slides, I'll answer it a little bit better as we actually see it on a spreadsheet.
Awesome. And then one final quick question from Steve again. Do you tend to use local individual community banks for the refi?
So we don't use like community banks or big banks. We use what's called brokers that do with debt service loans. And debt service loans are typically loans that are backed by Wall Street or other groups that are basically have become the gap between your traditional banks and your hard money lenders. For those of you on the call that don't know what a hard money lender is somebody who gives you quick and easy cash at a very high interest rate, and you have to pay that back in a short amount of time. Your traditional banks are going to give you a very low rate, 30-year fixed, right? And what the debt service loan is, it basically provides you a solution in the middle. Their rates are not going to be 2.5, okay? But they're not going to make you repay that loan in a year either. And it's not going to be a high interest. It's going to be somewhere in the middle.
All right, and just real quick to re-emphasize what Ralph was just explaining before we move on, because the refinance portion in general is really what makes the BRRRR strategy so special. So I know one of my personal main concerns when I first started thinking about investing was the fact that I had worked so hard to save up cash. And if I used up all of my savings and the money that I had set aside for an investment, I would have had to start all over again to save for the next investment. So with BRRRR, as you can see, you're able to use that same chunk of money over and over and over again. So that's definitely something that stands out from other investment strategies. All right. And then moving along to the fifth and final step. So after you refinance, the next step is simply to repeat the process all over again. And you basically want to keep doing this until you build a portfolio that you're satisfied with. So it's really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. So one of the ways to keep yourself sane and organized throughout the entire process of doing multiple BRRRRs is simply by creating systems. So systems always allow you to scale at a higher level, and pretty much anything that you have to do multiple times should have some sort of system or process to it. So in the beginning of our journey, and Ralph can attest to this, we were all over the place. We took on multiple rehabs at the same time, which essentially forced us to just take massive action. And it was a great way for us to learn. However, it wasn't necessarily the most comfortable approach. And I can tell you that now, after having done almost 20 BRRRR projects together, we definitely prioritize creating systems. So whether it's organization of all of your files and records, checklists for every step along the way, standards for vendor relationships, subcontractors that we manage, literally everything should have its own process and a system that you stick to, that you're basically doing the same thing the exact same way every single time. And just keep in mind that this is always a work in progress. There are definitely times where we think we have things under control, and then some new situation arises, which causes us to have to tweak our systems. But as long as we have some sort of organized system in place, it just makes things so much easier and helps to avoid things from falling through the cracks.
I was going to say, Ayana, I still feel like we're all over the place. Okay.
I agree.
But that is part of the process. That's the evolution of business. And the important part is we continue to move forward. And every single time we repeat the process, we find a little tweak or a little quirk that we can kind of improve on and make it that much easier the next go around. So we're not striving for perfection. We're just striving for, improving little by little every single time.
Absolutely. And that's actually a great segue into this next slide.
Well, let me stop you right there, Ayana. Would you mind sharing an example of a system that has really been helpful?
Oh yeah, so just again, creating those checklists. So the first go around, we wouldn't necessarily know what we were going to ask the contractor, what we were going to look for, what came first, what came second, third, fourth. So now it's kind of, we have those systems as like a checklist, and we literally go down line item and go, okay, have we done this yet? Have we done that? Whether it's just changing the locks when we first acquire ownership of a property, whether it's securing the property, whether it's getting multiple bids from contractors, putting on utilities, just little things that you don't sometimes always think about. But if you just have some sort of checklist in place, it just helps. Taking before photos, saving them on the drive, just little things like that. We could do a whole nother webinar on systems alone.
Yes. Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we will do that.
Yeah. All right, so this quote, it's a famous Bruce Lee quote. We inspired to put it in here based off of the book by David Green on the BRRRR strategy. So it's, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. So the main thing to remember here is, as they always say, every expert was once a beginner. We all have to start somewhere. And true mastery of something comes from doing the same thing over and over and over again. You get better along the way. The more you do something, the better you get at it. So you just have to get started. And that was actually my biggest problem in the beginning, was that paralysis by analysis. It was hard to just take that leap, take that action. And it's one of the reasons why Ralph and I partnered together, because we were able to combine our forces. We have, strengths and weaknesses in different areas. So we were able to take action by partnering.
Shoot first, ask questions later, right?
Yeah, that's the difference
my
between
motto.
us. Ralph likes
That's
to
my motto.
shoot and then aim.
That's
I'm all
right.
about
Shoot,
aiming
wait,
and
what?
then recalibrating.
Did I shoot something by mistake? Uh-oh. Before we move on, I think they had a question. Can we start kind of backwards with an FHA 201k loan, Hermano? The truth is, there's no wrong answer. However you can secure financing, it's fine. The challenge we have found is that typically when you're buying distressed off-market properties, timing is critical, and the condition of the property is typically very poor, and insuring the property is typically a challenge. So because of all those factors, I typically and we typically don't recommend FHA or your traditional types of financing, because you got a gun to your head and you have to hurry up and close. So we typically recommend hard money or cash. And you want to have a really good relationship with your hard money lender, because they're going to essentially back you up when you're trying to get a property with terms that are not favorable to you. So in exchange, you can get a property at the right discounted price. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and it depends on the condition of the property, as you mentioned. I mean, if you remember some of the pictures that we showed earlier in the presentation, some of the properties are literally not livable in any way, so they would never qualify for a loan like FHA.
Yeah, and just think of it this way. The less money you have to put down on a loan, the higher the risk it is for the bank. So the bank is going to want to make sure that everything is working and is in good condition, which is clearly the opposite of what we're looking for in distressed properties. We're looking for those opportunities, those properties that are basically you want to burn your clothes when you leave the house. That's the type of property you're looking for. And your typical lending will not be able to cater to that, and they won't be able to do it in a short enough amount of time. So hard money or cash, I would say, is the way to go. All right, so guys, I don't always buy and hold real estate, but when I do, I BRRRR them. That was a little meme that I created. You like that?
Hilarious.
I see myself as that guy right there when I'm like 70 years old in a suit and white beard. My beard's already white. So, okay, so side-by-side purchase. So we created this Excel sheet, and hopefully you guys don't fall asleep as I explain it. But basically, this is the way the numbers are supposed to look like and work in 3 different ways. The first way is your traditional way of approaching real estate investing, which is, slap a little paint on it, do hardly anything to it, get it rented, and start, earning a passive income. The second approach is what we're discussing today, the BRRRR. And the third approach is fix and flip. So in this example, the purchase price is $140,000. Okay, in your traditional BRRRR, you're not going to do any type of renovation to it. Okay, so you're basically just putting a down payment. You're getting a loan for 75%. You're holding it for just about a month or two before you rent it, and then it starts to cash flow. On the Burr side, you got $140,000 purchase price. You're going to put $40,000 into the rehab. It's going to probably take you about 3 to 4 months of holding costs while you're renovating it. You're going to refinance the deal. It's going to cost you money to do that. You're going to get a new loan at $184,000. You're increasing the value, the ARV, to $230,000. And here's where the difference is between traditional and Burr. In the traditional, you're going to sink $40,000 into that deal, even if there's no renovations needed. And in the Burr, you're going to have only $11,000 left when it's all said and done, right? Because as you increase the value of the property, you're able to refinance into a new loan, and the new loan is going to give you back most of that money that you put into the project. Makes sense? Now, interestingly enough, the Burr model and the fix and flip model, it's the same exact process. The only difference is on the fix and flip, you would sell it and make a $25,000 profit, versus the Burr, you would hold it and keep $11,000 in the deal. Any questions on that slide before we move on? Because I know there's a lot of numbers and a lot of data I just threw at you guys. All right.
So just to reiterate, traditional is basically move-in ready type of investment, right?
Yeah. Go back to the slide before. So basically, the traditional, the model that I use is like, you saw that house that they say, man, it's in great shape. It's old, but it's in great shape. Everything works, and all we got to do is put some paint on it, fix a couple doorknobs, and we can rent it. So that was the type of example I was trying to give with a traditional way of financing, because the traditional way of investing is, it needs a little bit of work and we're good to go. Like that in the old school way of investing was considered a good deal. In the Burr way of investing, it's in the worse shape it is, the better the investment, the more we can force the appreciation and the improvements through the renovations, right? So in this example, I was assuming that we had to do nothing to the renovation, and what did the numbers look like versus the Burr? We would force the resale value by making the improvements. So to continue what we just saw before, this is the breakdown on the numbers in regards to the rent rate, okay? So in the traditional way of renting it, we're getting $14,000 a year in rent, okay? And in the Burr, we're getting $23,000. Why is it more in the Burr? Because as you make the improvements and the renovations, you're gonna rent it for a higher number. That's just the way the numbers work. Typically, especially in South Florida, where there's very few houses for rent, single family, that is. And then you have the mortgage. Our mortgage is going to be higher on the Burr because you have that refinance and you have a higher loan to value. However, on the traditional mortgage, it's lower because you're only financing 75% of the $140,000. Taxes are the same, insurance is the same. Property management is going to be a percentage, a little bit more on the Burr. And here's where it gets interesting. Your net operating income is drastically more on the Burr side, okay, because you're collecting higher rents. And it's a higher, what we call debt service ratio. And the debt service ratio is essentially what you collect in rent against what your total expenses are, PITI, principal, interest, tax, insurance, and property management on the property, right? So you got a 1.25 debt service ratio, which essentially is the magic number for debt service ratio loans. And then this is my favorite part, and that is the cash on cash return on your investment. It is a 10x on Burr. And why is it 10x? Because if you remember on the slide before, you had almost $40,000 left in the deal during the traditional way of investing versus the Burr. Once you refinance, you only got 11,000. So not only are we collecting a net operating income that's higher, okay, but because we have less money in the deal, it accelerates the cash on cash return on investment. Does that make sense, guys?
Clear as mud.
Any questions? May, what do you think? Did I miss anything there? Is there anything that you think I can clarify? Because look, I can talk numbers all day long, but sometimes I tend to skim over some of the details.
Ayana, go back one slide. I just want to leave it up there one moment. Does anybody have any questions? A lot of numbers. If you're not number savvy like me, you're probably like, what the heck? No? Okay, I think we're good.
I can't emphasize enough the debt service ratio. That's the number you're going to want to ask your lender when you're picking a lender to refinance. You're going to want to ask them, what is your debt service ratio? Okay, because some lenders will say, oh, I don't need a 1.1. Other lenders will say, I need a 1.25, and I want to take into consideration vacancies and capital expenditures, and maybe they have a long list of things. So do your homework, do your research, and make sure you understand that debt service ratio when picking a lender. So that way you're not surprised.
So taking notes, guys, write that down about the debt service ratio. Hope everyone's taking notes. All right, for everyone that was on early, this is a moment everyone's been dying to know, I'm sure. If you guys recall the before and after shot, actual case study where we had you guess in the chat how much you think renovation costs. Yes, now we're going to go over those numbers. So if, let me see if I can remember what everyone had jotted down. We had 50,000, we had 35 to 40,000. I think somebody put 60,000, not too far off. The actual rehab cost there, as you can see on the screen, was 75 grand. Okay.
I'm shocked that nobody went over. Everybody was under on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why.
And I thought we did pretty good with the budget. 75. I thought it could have been 100, but yeah, this one was 75,000. Believe it or not. And we did 3 buildings just the same. So we did 75,000 times 3 different buildings. They were all in similar condition. So you want me to go over the case study, May?
Absolutely. Sorry. Yes, please go.
No problem. Absolutely. So this is a triplex. So it's a 6-3, which means there's 3 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments. The one you're seeing there, that's 1 apartment out of the 3. We bought each building for $268,000. We put a down payment of 10%, $26,800. The rehab cost of $75,000. The rental rate was $4,050. The cash on cash return on investment was 26%. In this particular case, we brought in an investor, and they were able to provide the capital required to do this project. They gave us $101,800, and in about 6.5 months worth of time, we were able to return that capital back to the investor plus a 10% return. So for more information on how you guys can get involved as investors or as partners later on in the line, at the end of the presentation, we'll give you more details on that.
And serious question, Steve's wondering, does he win the house then? Yeah.
Absolutely. Free rent for 1 year.
Right. And another serious question, will you share these slides with us? They are well done. Absolutely. In fact, I'm recording this and I will figure out how to get it on YouTube for everyone to rewatch. Awesome. On to the next slide.
Commonly made mistakes. The reality is we could have a lot longer list than what we have here, but this is a few of the things that we feel that a lot of times people make mistakes on or fall short of when trying to do the BRRRR. The first one is only relying on popular real estate websites. I know everyone knows Zillow and Realtor.com and other websites, and although they are a great indicator for getting your listing price wrong, they are not usually the best approach or the only approach that you're going to take when buying properties. You're going to have leverage other systems and tools and professionals in order to make sure that you're getting it right, getting the numbers right, getting the property right, getting the budget right. Not starting with the end in mind. A lot of times people they'll see a property, they'll say, it's a great deal, I like this neighborhood, prices are going up, let me get it, without actually going through from beginning to end what that project is going to look like, what the lender is going to lend them, how much the rehab is going to be, how much time is it going to take, so on and so forth. So not starting with the end in mind is a huge commonly made mistake. Not having your personal finances in order. Okay, I have a lot of people that call me up and say, Ralph, I've got 25,000, can I do a BRRRR? The reality is, no, you can't. You have to have the amount of money needed to do a BRRRR, which we'll get to in the next slide. You're also going to want to have a cushion just in case you go over in time or your budget is higher. Okay, and you also want to make sure you have a cushion for yourself for any possible emergencies that might happen along the way. So get your finances in order before you're ready to take the big jump and get started in BRRRR. and not spending enough time building your network. Okay, your network is your net worth, and you're going to want to spend a lot of time constantly working with people that are like-minded, that are wanting to get in the business, that are in the business, that are complementary to the business. All of those are important. Spending time on a webinar like this, talking to people that are already doing what you want to do, all of that is very important. You got to really put the effort in, and you got to spend the time to do so. Trying to time the market. This is in every type of investment you can think of. People are always saying, is it too late? Should I jump in? The truth is that when you find something that you're passionate about or that you're interested in doing, timing the market is not the right approach. It's about making sure that you have the right plan and that the property or asset that you're buying fits that plan. Waiting for the perfect deal. Again, I don't know how many of you are on this call are realtors or real estate professionals that have worked for that buyer that says, I'm just waiting for the perfect deal. Well, guess what? They're going to be waiting for a while. There's no such thing as a perfect deal. Again, look at the current market conditions, look at your business plan, and ask yourself, is my business plan realistic based on the current market conditions? And then be patient, and the right deal will come along. Not the perfect deal, but the right deal. Not vetting partners or vendors. Okay, make sure that you ask around, get references, ask for current jobs. If you're interviewing a contractor, what other jobs have you done? What customers can we interview or talk to that have worked with you? What other investors have worked with you? Vet your vendors and partners. And last but not least, my favorite, shoot first, ask questions later, not taking action. Okay, at some point in time, no matter how many books you read or how many webinars you attend, you're going to have to take some kind of action. So not taking action is also a very common mistake.
And something to add to that, Ayana mentioned this the other day, is, you want to make sure you partner with people that are in a position you want to copy. Don't partner with somebody in your same position, if that makes sense, right, Ralph?
Yes, and along with that, when looking for a partner with someone who's going to offset you or complement your weaknesses or your strengths, because it makes no sense to partner with someone who's a carbon copy of you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Anybody that knows Ralph and myself knows that we are complete opposites, but it's actually a good thing in this partnership. He has strengths where I may be weaker and vice versa. So we're able to complement each other and work well when it comes to the business.
Definitely.
That's right. I make mistakes, she fixes them. That's our partnership.
Ayana's the brains of the operation, let's be honest, right?
Absolutely.
Great, good partners in this sense.
Great, thank you. All right, so before we dive into any more questions from you guys, here's just a couple of frequently asked questions. First and foremost, Ralph, I'm going to ask you this: what is the best way for people to get started, would you say?
I always tell people, be of service, bring something to the table. Okay, that could be finding a deal for us. Like, we're always looking for deals to Burr. So you can say, hey, what are you looking for? And go find us a lead or someone who might have a deal that makes sense. Or ask the person that you're trying to do business with, or the person that you're trying to be like, and say, what part of your business are you having trouble with? Are you finding most challenging, and how can I help? Without necessarily asking for something in return. And that's what I feel is the best way to get started.
Awesome. Ayana, do you want to add to that before I move on? No? Okay. Ralph, how much money do you need to do a BRRRR?
Sorry, guys, I was on mute, but go ahead.
Okay. So how much money do you need? 75 to 200,000. And this basically comes down to your level of risk and your appetite for risk. 75,000 will be on the low end, and that would require you to leverage hard money and other sources of funding. And then 200,000 would be you're putting most of or all of your money into the deal. And although it's costing you more money to do so, the BRRRR, you have less leverage of other people's money, so you don't have that pressure of making the monthly interest payments or having to finish a project in a short amount of time. So it all depends on your level for risk, but 75 to 200,000 is the range.
And something I'd like to ask too is, how can people get creative in raising that capital? You know, like with my mom who's doing the Burr with us, she was lucky she had access to a HELOC, if you guys know what that is, a home equity line of credit over there in Seattle, Washington, just sitting on crazy amounts of equity. So, you know, she's been leveraging that in our Burr. Do you have any other recommendations as to how people can get creative in raising capital?
There's no wrong way to raise capital, but with leverage comes responsibility. Hey, I kind of like that. With leverage comes responsibility. And the reason I say that is because if you don't know what you're doing and you leverage money, you could put yourself in a pickle, okay? But if you know what you're doing and you have the right plan in place and you're able to execute your plan with precision, leverage can be a huge advantage in this business. So any way you can find it, try to get it. Just understand the type of consequences you have by leveraging and the type of risk you're going to have by leveraging, and whether it's a brother, a friend, a sister, a HELOC, or a personal loan, there's no wrong way to raise money.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as far as getting creative for looking for money, I would just challenge you to think about what you currently have going on. If you have savings in the bank and it's just sitting there not making any return, if your 401k or IRA isn't performing the way you would like it to, you know, just think about what you have going on, maybe your family members, you know, if you want to involve somebody, just think about what you have going on and how it's performing, and maybe it could perform better elsewhere.
Yes, but always do your due diligence, right, guys?
Absolutely.
Especially
do your own research.
Absolutely. So next question, Ralph, which market is the best for Burr?
In my opinion, I think Ayana would probably agree with me, it's the markets that are the lower price point, which the debt service covers better. In other words, the nicer neighborhoods that are 500,000-600,000, the rental income won't cover the debt service in a way where these types of loans are being able to be originated. So we like to go after the markets that are, you know, up and coming, that are the lower end, like under 200,000 or 225,000 purchase price. And those typically tend to be the ones that the debt is serviced, and that the ARV is at 70% or lower.
Awesome. So not South Florida then, right?
We do South Florida all the time. We have a couple projects right now that we're working on in Miami, and people ask us all the time, how do you find a project in Miami under 200,000, or like the last one we did for 165,000? And the reality is this: we have our network. We talk to people every single day. And when we find the right project that needs a full renovation and the numbers make sense, we execute. So believe it or not, in South Florida, Miami and Broward, we're able to find properties under 200,000, single family.
But not. And I know there might be people listening from other states, so it definitely depends on the market, because certain states may be better for cash flow, and they make more monthly, but they may not be best for appreciation. Down here in Florida, we do have the appreciation, so that works to our benefit. But there's different pros and cons for every market.
Absolutely. And probably worth mentioning that these types of deals you're not going to find on the MLS, right, Ralph? They've really got to be off market, would you say?
You could find it on the MLS. However, there's a lot of people like Hermano on this call, or others, that are very good at finding properties on the MLS and able to lock them up at the right price. So even though I have access to MLS, I don't really bother, because I'm not as good as they are finding those deals and locking them up. It takes a special skill set, and rather than competing with those people, I like to partner with them. There's enough money to be made, and there's abundance in this real estate business. Partner up with the people that do things better than you can, so you can do more business together.
Awesome. Yeah. And then another question here on the frequently asked question is, Ayana, if you want to take this one, can you invest passively? Can you take a passive role in Burr investing?
Absolutely. So we partner with people in various different ways. Some people like to be more hands-on and learn about the process. And that's, when Ralph mentioned, find us a deal, and we'd love to partner in that way. But other people love the concept of the Burr strategy, but they don't necessarily have the time or, the energy to put, to be involved hands-on. but they'd still like to make a great return on their money. So we partner in that way as well. You can be one of our private money investors, and feel free to reach out to us if anyone is interested. Typically, we set up a call. We talk more about our business model and the way it works as a passive investor. And if it's something that works well for you, then we can decide to move forward. So definitely reach out to us if that's something that you might be interested in.
Yeah, just like my mom, right? She's definitely taking the passive approach, enjoying her retirement.
Yes.
We have a question from Kevin. Hi, Kevin. How do you find off-market deals? He says. Ralph, would you like to take that one?
Yes, how to find off-market deals. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but one way is to work with off-market wholesalers, probate attorneys, real estate professionals, friends and family. You can go ahead and do some of the advertising yourself. You can do some bandit signs and post them all over the city and get the code enforcement to call you, or you can knock on your neighbor's doors till they're sick of seeing your face and tell them that you want to buy their house cash. There's a lot of different ways to find properties off market. The idea is to be consistent, to be persistent, and to have many people out there constantly being aware of what you're looking for. And eventually that hard work and perseverance and persistence will pay off.
Perfect. Now, we only have just 3 minutes left before we finish up for the day. So please, you guys, if you have any further questions, drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. We have just 3 minutes left. If you want to stay in touch with us, here's our contact information. Our cell phone numbers, Instagram, follow us, emails. Feel free to jot that down or take a screenshot. Any other questions?
I want to give a quick disclaimer. If you do follow me on social media, I just want to let you know, you might get some cryptomania going on. Okay, so I'm not all about real estate. I do talk about other things that I get a little obsessive about. So just want to give you a disclaimer up front.
Hey, we have a couple of questions coming in from Michelle.
All right.
Who is included in your core rockstar team?
What's the question? Sorry.
Who is included in your core rockstar team? Like what professionals and vendors? Right, Michelle?
Somebody read the book. That's exactly what they say in the Burr book. Who's included in our rockstar team? Ayana, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely us, Joan. We have a great team. We have actually a couple great lenders that we always turn to. We have some rock star contractors that we go to. And that's, again, been trial and error. We have had to fire contractors in the past. But right now we have a great team that works for us when it comes to the rehab. We also have a fantastic transaction coordinator. I'm going to give a shout out to her right now, Priscilla. She's on the call. We love her. She's, our back structure, our bones in the background, just working hard for us.
Heart and soul of the team.
Really.
Priscilla. We love you and we can't do it without you. Keep up the great work. How about our insurance person, Patty Soto? Yeah.
Patty, she's great. Yeah, no, she's excellent. We have a great insurance vendor. And then May is even like part of our team. She's constantly sending referrals to us. Like she's the one who pushed us to do this webinar to begin with. She pushed us, she gave us a deadline. She's like, let's do this. Let's make this happen. And this every time. So I would say
bullet point, Ralph said, take action. Right? Yeah. Sometimes you can't be perfect. That's the tough one. We have 1 minute left. I want to cover a couple more of these questions.
It's 18 hours.
Boom, right there on the dot. I think we have a couple
more. All right, see you guys. Bye. Gotta go.
Evelio Martinez is asking, how do you find a GC to truly trust to finish a job on time and professionally? That's a really good question. You can't.
Great.
No.
I'll go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one quick thing. So it rarely ever stays on schedule. We've implemented some things as far as when it comes to the initial agreement. We try to be as detailed as possible up front so that they know what they're getting themselves into and they know the scope of work. And then we do give deadlines and we don't pay until certain work is completed. We also put in the terms of the agreement that if they finish early before deadline, we'll give them a bonus. And that again is, David Green's advice from his book. And then if they finish late for every week that they go over, we kind of penalize them by reducing the amount. Those are some things we've
That
put
was
into
really
place.
great. I hope you guys wrote that down. That was really great.
For me, when it comes to contractors, it's probably the single thing in the entire BRRRR process that number one requires you to take action to get anywhere with, because you can try to have the perfect contract in place and the perfect budget and know exactly what you want in the rehab, but until you start to take action, start to interview different contractors and walk through the property with them, you're really not going to be able to get an idea of where you're going to get to. And number two, it's the single most rewarding yet frustrating part of the process, because you think you got it all figured out with a contractor, and then Murphy's Law sets in and they will let you down. And then just when you think this contractor is useless and you'll never use him again, and you promise yourself you'll never use him again, you end up using him again, and he somehow delivers beautifully. So I've been, I've been shocked, I've been disappointed, I've been depressed, I've been ecstatic with contractors, but with contractors themselves, there's no finite, definite yes, no, good or bad. It's always a moving target, and you just have to kind of keep, verifying, asking questions, going off of your instinct, looking at what they do more than what they say, how they communicate. All of that just comes all together, and it's constantly a moving target. So one of the most challenging yet rewarding parts of the BRRRR process is contractors.
Absolutely.
Ralph always likes to say contractors are good until they're not.
And they're not until they're good. I mean, it's true.
Yeah. So now we're 2 minutes past the hour, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but we have a couple of questions. So if you guys have to go, I understand, but do we have time for a couple more questions, guys?
Absolutely. I'm good.
Okay. So from Jason Boa, Jason, if you're still on, he says, I have $40,000 cash. Can I start with a condo or small single family home? I have a pre-approval, but can't find a deal where the numbers make sense.
Well, I would say, number one, you don't have enough money. You're cutting it way too short, and you'd have to execute your plan perfectly. And even with it being executed perfectly, I think you'll still run out of money. I think that the minimum that I feel comfortable doing, and Ayana, you can jump in there if you like, is 75,000. And number two, I don't love to do condos with BRRRRs just because of all the red tape and the restrictions that the associations make you go through. What are your thoughts, Ayana?
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. When it comes to estimating numbers, we go over our budget all the time. So when you're cutting things too close and don't have that extra cushion, it just, setting yourself up for, headaches. So I would just wait to save up a little bit more.
Awesome. And Steve again is asking, let's see, let me go back to the beginning. What is a reasonable percentage to pay a contractor to reserve their time up front? 25%, 40%, and then have a payment schedule?
I can actually jump in on that one.
Go for it.
So initially, and this is one of the problems that we had with our contractors before, is that the argument was always that I need to pay for materials. And that was why they needed some money up front. And especially when it's a new relationship with the contractor, you don't know their work. You don't know if they're trustworthy. We've had contractors disappear on us and not answer our calls in the past. But we understand that, yeah, if they need money for materials, you have to give them a little bit. But that's one of the great things about the way we do it now, where we separate materials from labor, because they no longer have that excuse of I need to buy materials. We're paying for the materials. So it's basically the labor that they would be getting paid for. And so in that sense, we no longer pay for work until it's completed. So we have cameras installed in our properties so that we can see. Ralph and I will stop by the properties on a weekly, bi-weekly basis so we can check up on things. And then we'll have the contractors send us videos and pictures of the work to ensure that it's done. And then we can pay them.
Yeah, I definitely like to get a little bit of work done and a little bit of sweat equity on their end before I ever give them a payment. They almost have to earn our payment structure. So there's plenty of things they can do to start that relationship, whether it's demo or whether it's just them doing 1 week's worth of labor up front. But when you start the relationship with, you have to pay them just so they can show up, you're off on the wrong foot. and you're going to set yourself up for failure.
That's really sound advice. In my experience, they're all pretty, I don't want to say scammers. I'm sorry if we have any contractors on the call today.
They're just better, they're better at the process than we are. They've dealt with many more customers than we've dealt with contractors. So the name of the game is, can they get paid before they do work? And for us is, can I make sure you're going to show up before I pay you? So that's the tug of war that we constantly have. And you have to find a way to earn that trust initially. And if they just can't understand where you're coming from, then you got the wrong partnership and you got to keep looking.
And that's actually a question that I would like to ask you guys. I'm surprised nobody's asked this, but how do you recommend doing due diligence on contractors, and where do you find them?
It's a scary road. But the way you do due diligence is you got to ask a lot of questions. You got to ask for possible referrals or other jobs that they've been to. Go inspect their work. I know it takes extra time, but it's absolutely critical. The worst thing that can happen is you hire someone that you've never seen them do the work, and either A, they disappear on you, or B, once they start doing the renovations, you realize they don't have the skill sets necessary and you have to fire them and start over. So you definitely want to take the time to vet them.
Or they have a family emergency on the day of your deadline. Am I right?
We've had contractors say they're going on a weekend vacation and don't come back, or come back a month later and you're behind and having to pay extra costs. So again, before those type of habits present themselves, you're going to want to make sure that you at least have a little bit of homework done on that contractor and research before you pull the trigger.
Ralph,
yeah, they've gotten COVID like 3 different times in a row where they've been in the hospital. It's like, hey, you used that excuse 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's like they have a list of objection handlers, and they're like, when your boss asks you about why you're behind, you say that the worker got COVID. I mean, that is probably the most commonly used of objection that we get typically from our contractors, right, Ayana?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Ralph, I'm surprised you didn't share your funny story with the contractors.
Which one? I got so many.
Well, now I don't remember. You have to share one.
Something about
like a booster. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Years,
I got one. So there was this job where basically we had a group of workers, and they're like, hey, don't worry, we're gonna take care of this roof on the weekend and we're gonna get it done. And then we're like, okay, no problem. So we let them do their thing, buy them some beer, and we come back, and the work is not done, and they got this barbecue set up, and they drank all the beer, and we're like, this is interesting. And we look around, we're like, wait a second, I thought that we saw some iguanas here before. They ended up catching and cooking all the iguanas that were on the property and drinking all the beer, and they ended up, they were behind and delayed on the job because they just had a little bit too much fun. So you never know what type of contractors you're going to get or what they're going to do on their time off. So be careful. It's like the gremlins when you add water. You don't want to give them too much alcohol while they're on the job. They might get a little crazy and start cooking iguanas.
Yeah, just keep it to a little bit of alcohol, not a lot, right?
Exactly.
I actually have a story about that too, but it's a long one. Kind of you touched on it earlier, but there is a danger that sometimes you have to fire somebody, right? You think they're the person for the job, and then they have poor workmanship, and it can cost you way more money. So definitely worth the time to do your due diligence and see past work. Highly recommend. We have just a couple more questions. It's now 6:10. I think we could probably end by 6:15 if that's okay with you guys. But Kevin, he's asking actually, so most webinars are educational sales pitches, and this was super informative, but is this strictly an educational session, or is there a way to, or are you trying to recruit folks or something else? What's your inspiration to do this session? So
yeah, we want to give back. But we also want to have you guys be encouraged to reach out to us in ways to get involved or ways to invest. There's always opportunities. We're always looking for new investors. For that investor who has 25,000 and wants to get into a BRRRR but just isn't ready just yet, maybe we could take that 25,000 and we can work on giving you that fixed return. Meanwhile, you're growing the rest of your money required to do a BRRRR. Or maybe you're someone who just, got a pile of cash, has 250,000 or more that would like to BRRRR, and we have opportunities where we can partner up with those type of investors in a partnership setting. Or you're a wholesaler who just says, hey, I got some properties and I'd love to just send them over to you guys, so that way I can get assured a commission or a closing out of that, because in the off-market wholesale world, closing is key, and not every buyer is going to actually perform on what they say they're going to do. So again, everything and all real estate investing, we hope that you think of us first, and I also hope, and we also hope, that this is the beginning of other events and other webinars that we can provide that will continue the path towards creating a South Florida real estate investing environment where everybody can participate, share, and grow together.
Absolutely.
And we're just, introducing ourselves. We're all friendly. We love collaborating. We love networking. So if you, reach out to us or follow us on Instagram and let us know that you saw this webinar, like, we'd love to hear that. We'd love to just make new friends and acquaintances that we can talk investment and real estate with.
And I'd like to share just a real quick personal story as far as what it's like to partner with these guys, right? Because who doesn't, enter the real estate game being like, oh my God, I want to make a ton of money. And who doesn't want the whole pie for themselves, right? Ralph, you said that once, and that really, I think, was a great analogy. But would you rather have a piece of pie or zero pie? Just to like learn the ropes, minimal risk and all that kind of stuff. That was me, because I'm a busy person, busy real estate agent. And so I thought, why don't I leverage their expertise, their experience with minimal risk, et cetera. So, so definitely, I think the hope is that we can in the future collaborate and further do some networking as well. Maybe in person, who knows, if COVID ends, we'll see.
That would be cool, like a little happy hour or something like that, a little get together, a little meetup.
That would be really cool, actually. Who wants to organize it? Raise your hand on this webinar if you want to organize that for us, please.
I nominate May Schultz.
Oh, no. Daniel
Hermano had a question.
Yes, Daniel, you should totally organize a happy hour, please. Actually, Daniel and I are under contract for a house hack, so super cool. And by the way, we have 2 more questions. Is that okay if we take them real fast?
Yeah. Hermano had a question.
Yes. Well, first of all, we had one first before Hermano, but Michelle Rose was asking in the Q&A, do you let them know, I think that she means the contractors, do you let the contractors know that you'll have cameras in the house while they're working, or do you put them out without them knowing, or put them up without them knowing?
Yeah, no, they definitely know. 1, you can see it, and 2, I talk to our contractor like pretty much every single day. And there's times where I'm not getting signal for the Wi-Fi is messed up and I'm not getting signal from the camera. I literally have him like restart it for me sometimes. So they're fully aware of that.
Yeah, something we didn't get to in our systems, but part of our system is, and we pay a premium for it, but it helps us sleep at night, is we have camera systems on every single property that we do. And we do that for security purposes. And we also do that to monitor when contractors come and go.
Ooh, actually, one more thing to add on. It's not even just for the contractors, because we don't like to micromanage in any way. And usually I kind of turn them off during the days because I know they're working. But a lot of it is just for safety. So a little bit of a quick, horror story is we did have break-ins at one of our properties. It is common for people to break in when they see vacant properties. We had people break into our property and do drugs. We had people tear down the door. They broke the cameras. I had to call the police. So not to deter anyone from getting into real estate investing because of these stories, because it's common and it can easily be dealt with. But that is another reason of why we like having the cameras as well, is just that security aspect. So it's not even always just about the contractor.
Yeah, didn't that happen on our property in Oakland Park?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
But it's taken care of. They haven't been back since, and it's all good.
Yeah. And guys, that was definitely a situation where you wanted to burn your clothes after you enter that property.
Oh my God, that was terrible.
Douse yourself in hand sanitizer as well. Ralph, are you going to say something?
We had the crackheads keep breaking in, and we had to keep calling the cops, and we're catching all of this on camera. It's a surreal experience. As far as the cameras go, one of the questions was, what was the cost of the whole setup? If you like a referral, we can give it to you, but basically we have someone go out and install the camera and set up a little hub, because most of the time we're not going to have Wi-Fi set up like you would in your house. So instead of having Comcast go out there, which by the way we have done and it wasn't the most cost-effective way to do it, they actually set up a hub, and it's a monthly service where you go out there and you can have your camera set up and it's all set up. All you need is electricity.
All right. So
And the cameras, you just order a pack from Amazon. Super simple. So reach out to us if you want more info on that.
Yeah. And getting to Hermano's question, is it not possible to tell the contractor that you'll put money in an escrow and it'll be released when the labor is done and the time frame is met? That's a good question.
In a perfect world, yes, but the reality is it's not practical. I mean, we're talking about contractors that might not be the most sophisticated. They might not even have a, who knows, they might not even have a checking account. In certain cases, we have to pay the girlfriend, because the girlfriend is the one that has the legitimate social security number. So that typically doesn't work, but you could try to do it. The best thing we do is we give them the contract up front and say, this is going to be the payment schedule and this is our expectation for the work as you go. And we try our best to pay them, but verify the work they're doing, because we're always going to push you to pay them. But if you don't verify what they've done, you'll get to the end of the project and you paid most of them the money, and then they still have more to do than you have left on your contract, and then you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Awesome. Yeah. And Steven says iguanas are chickens of the trees. Awesome. Let's see. We have maybe one final question from Steve, and then we'll wrap up for the day. If you guys have any further questions that occur to you later, please jot down our contact information. You got our phone numbers. You find us on Instagram, email, whatever suits your fancy. But last question here. What does the camera system cost, more or less, about for installation and monitoring? Is there a system you recommend? So you guys kind of touched on that a little bit, I guess.
Blink cameras on Amazon. Typically
It's like a few hundred. Or you could either get a 3-pack or a 5-pack. You just search on Amazon. They have a few different options. And then the installation, there's an initial fee. I want to say it's like 200 or 250. Don't quote me on that. And then there's a monthly service fee that you just pay on a monthly basis. But again, if you want specifics on that, reach out. We're happy to give our contact for the cameras.
Awesome. And before we sign off for the day, if you can, type a 1 in the chat if you would be interested in meeting together for a happy hour. I want to gauge the interest here. Who would actually show up for a happy hour?
There's only one way to find out.
2. Right? I can't believe I have to organize it. I think Daniel Fuentes volunteered himself, right? Ayana. Okay. Anybody else? It's just gonna be Ayana and me apparently. And Irma, thank you. Come on, type a 1 in the chat if you'd be down to meet up in a happy hour. Of course, if you're local. Priscilla, Romano, anybody else? Ralph, hopefully. Anybody else? In Miami? Oh man,
what we could do,
man,
is they usually have a meetup. I don't know if they've done it before, but they usually have a meetup in Bigger Pockets for South Florida, and maybe we can piggyback that. So they're doing all the heavy lifting of like setting up the event, and all we got to do is just show up and drink the alcohol. We don't condone that, by the way, but when in Miami, we'll be sipping on mojitos.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and really, really great questions. Hopefully you've gotten some value from us today. And we're hoping to do this again. Scheduling is really tough for the 3 of us. We'd love to do it again. I think we'd get a little bit more motivated though if it was happy hour, right?
Absolutely.
No slides, just alcohol, right?
I just want to say real quick, I appreciate everyone that showed up for this call. We really appreciate you guys. And, I myself was a little bit nervous, haven't really done webinars in the past. So thank you so much, everyone. And don't hesitate to reach out, say hello. We would love that.
Yeah. And please provide your honest feedback, because this was the first webinar I've ever done.
Oh yeah, so feedback. We'd love that. Critique, anything.
Constructive criticism. Exactly. But thanks guys so much. Have a wonderful night, and until next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace out.